Okay, so welcome, folks. Nice to see you. I'm Matthew, and yeah, we thought Stacy and I talked it over. We thought to sit for maybe 15 minutes and then open it for conversation, questions, exploration about teaching, um, practice, whatever. And yeah, so welcome in, and I'll lightly guide us for a little bit, and then we'll open it. So maybe we begin with relaxation. No matter how tangled our mind is, no matter how thick the problems, challenges of our life are, everything looks at least a little bit different from the point of view of tranquility. And amidst the relaxation, there is our attention. We direct the attention somewhere narrowly to the sensations of the breathing, or broadly to the body, to sound, or make the anchor everywhere, nowhere, the attention directed towards the predominant arising, whatever that might be. Tranquility supports the attention. The simplicity of our attention supports tranquility. And still, there's more happening. Usually, the attention and awareness are not fully congruent. The attention is a kind of spotlighting function, holding something in mind. Takes place within the context of maybe we say broader background of knowing, the capacity to know. Sometimes practice emphasizes the direction of the attention, sense of attentional agency. And sometimes we attune to an awareness that feels very much like it doesn't depend on me. So there's relaxation, tranquility, attentional agency, awareness, but still more. Sort of seed the mind with thoughts or attitude, coloration, kind of ambiance of sorts, the ambiance of sometimes tenderness, sometimes a quiet love that we call equanimity. We soften around the places of clinging, of desperation. There's a very deep willingness not to get what we want, but in that willingness, we find we get what we actually want. Nice to nice to sit with you. Um, maybe just chat in a word or two of how you are, just so you see some words with match up with the names. Mhm. Okay, great. So I have no agenda. I didn't want to come with something in mind or prepared or whatever. Just try to be responsive to whatever is on your mind. And yeah, I think I know almost all of you in one way or another by name or face. And yeah, so it could be questions about practice, about teaching, which is just sort of another form of practice, the intersection of kind of one's own personal growth edge and teaching, sharing mindfulness or the complexities of any of that, and um, just see where things go. But you're welcome to just you can unmute and just jump in if you like, if there's something to you want to explore together.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi,
Just
welcome.
thank you. I'll just jump right in. I just see that my mentor is here, who I had very little FaceTime with. So hi, Mike. So this is not like a super well formulated question, but it's
Those
like,
are the ones I like best. So,
okay, so I feel like I am sort of exploring. I've been really in a space of doing a lot of writing and research about mindfulness for the last couple years. And so that's like very cognitive realm and like a different relationship with mindfulness than direct practice. And I recently have had these great experiences where I was at Mind and Life Summer Research Institute,
oh yeah,
which was awesome.
that's great.
And yeah, had a chance to interact with some Tibetan monastics who were there
Mhm.
and listen to their perspective on practice and kind of everything that was going on, like in the milieu of the Summer Research Institute. And so hearing that perspective about practice and then doing I did like a virtual retreat with Plum Village,
Mhm.
which was such a different style of practicing. And they were talking about bringing your spiritual energy into like every aspect of your life. And I'm
Mhm.
just feeling like now that I've finished a doctoral program.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of like moving, like, still active in research and writing and teaching and consulting, but I have so much more room and like spaciousness in my life at the moment.
Mhm.
And so it's like, how can I'm curious about your perspective
Mhm.
about infusing more awareness into daily life and how do you do that? Like,
Mhm.
I feel like I've heard these other perspectives from Plum Village or the
Mhm.
monastics that are kind of different from the way that we teach or think about mindfulness. And
Mhm.
what would be like your suggestion about how to I don't know, feel like so much more enriched and supported by your practice beyond the like, let me sit for 15, 20 minutes or take a mindful walk at night, you
Mhm,
know.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Um, so nice to see you. Congrats on finishing the doctorate. That's great. Yeah, I'm hearing you have a lot of different streams coming in, like Mind and Life, which is not explicitly Tibetan, but that's the dominant kind of influence there. And then Plum Village, and then Mark, kind of that world, and then all the your own research and reading, writing, and so that's a kind of that's a range of influences, kind of, and I don't think that's a problem, but you'll have to like sort through, kind of. I feel like, oh yeah, I kind of feel like I've harvested some of the kind of kernels of goodness from a range of different traditions, and they've sort of all influenced my heart in some way, even though I haven't tried to just totally reconcile all of it. That's a little bit of just prefatory comment. But yeah, I mean, maybe this seems obvious, but like, why do you want to infuse your life with mindfulness? It's not a trick question. It's like,
because it's so joyful. Like it feels good. I love mindfulness, but I feel like to some degree it's become a bit transactional.
mhm,
Like I'm on this retreat because I have to be on this retreat, or
mhm,
like sometimes it's like I'm doing it because I love it and I want to do it, but sometimes I'm doing it because I need to.
mhm.
And then sometimes I'm doing it and I'm thinking, well, I know about a research study that, like I'm back in that like cognitive realm when I'm listening to other people teach. Not as
Yeah,
much more now that I'm done, but like, cause
yeah.
you're so in a state of like cognitive dominance. I don't know.
Right, right, right. Well,
I want to move out of that, I think.
yeah, moving out of the cognitive dominance of it. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I hear a little like you're at a place where I don't know, you're kind of trying to you may be sort of at some kind of inflection point in terms of what mindfulness is, or what the practice is, what the path is to you. And you may have sort of like outgrown previous intentions for practice in a certain way. And is like, okay, now what is practice? And it has to, come from, you sort of look like, what am I actually interested in? Like, where is the curiosity, not in the kind of sweet, ordinary way we use that word curiosity, like, I need to understand this. I need to understand this about my own heart, my own mind, about my own behavior around whatever. I need to understand something. I need to understand this loop of dukkha, suffering, that I keep getting tangled up in, or I need to understand this because I can serve people better if I do, but it's like I feel like it needs to come from a certain kind of sense of spiritual urgency that's born inside of you. And that may not be the agenda of the researchers, or of the Mind and Life crew, or Thich Nhat Hanh crew, or like, or us. It's like, okay, so what is it? What is it? Um and yeah, for me, I'm usually oriented around suffering. Like, that is the most deeply joy. It's like, oh yeah, that's nice, kind of like, but suffering, me causing suffering, even if it's very subtle, I want to know about that, and like that's been the kind of wellspring of motivation around practice. It may not be for you. It may be like, okay, I'm actively dedicating kind of practice to to the welfare of others, basically. Sometimes it's hard to get motivated to practice for oneself, but it's like, okay, actually, I know a lot of people depend on my mind, or a lot of people depend on my heart in some way, and that's the motivation, that kind of because otherwise it feels a little, it just if it's not animated by something deep in us, it feels performative or something like that. I do think it's worth, maybe once a week sitting longer meaning longer than you want to sit. Like sometimes people ask me, how long should I sit? I usually say like a little bit longer than you want to, kind of, and that may not be the right answer in a lot of contexts, but it's like sometimes it's like, okay, maybe once a week you sit, actually, okay, I'm gonna stay with this for longer, or maybe even until the body is not comfortable. I'm just gonna stay, or sort of work your way through the different phases of restlessness or agitation or cognitive grasping or something like that, and stay close to the body. This is sort of like what's coming up for me. How does that all that sound to you?
Yeah, I like this idea of re investigating, like what is my intention? What's my current relationship with mindfulness? And I do find that when I'm more body aware, it totally of course takes me out of my head, and I feel this strong sense of like my physical energy, my which is very peaceful and joyful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, yeah. So when did you defend the dissertation? When was that?
Beginning of April.
Beginning of April. Okay. Okay. Got it.
But yeah, I mean, I've had like publications, presentations,
Yeah.
like all kinds of stuff still kind of happening. And finally, the dust has settled and I'm kind of settling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. And can you get away for a residential retreat? Is it?
I would like to.
Yeah.
I'm not mailing it in online, but like
Yeah.
checking the box and Mike, don't tell on me.
Yeah, yeah.
Doing it online because it's convenient.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Got it, got it. Well, when the timing is right, worth kind of, that sort of does t typically illuminate what's worthy of our curiosity and what's, that kind of thing. So,
Thank you.
okay, thanks. Yeah.
Hi, Matthew. This is Rocky here.
Welcome. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone again. Um, I have a question. So once a week, I hold space for two of my friends who are just young mothers and want to meditate. And they were like, "We're not going to go anywhere. Can you, can you just hold space for us? We want to do this."
Mm,
And we've been doing it regularly. They've been showing up for 6 months, and I show up, and over a period of time, it's gone from 20 minutes to 30 minutes.
mhm,
But it's usually late in the evening, like 8:30.
mm,
Um, and I get a sense that both of them fall asleep most of the time.
mhm,
Um, and in the beginning it was okay, but now I'm starting to see like I don't want to nudge them into too much like try because I know that, their days are just
mhm,
so full, right? Like they have 1 year olds and 4 year
mm,
olds and
mm,
just like and working and life.
mhm,
So I'm just wondering like how do I kind of get them more interested in even trying to kind of work through that hindrance of sleep?
mhm, mhm,
Um, and yeah, I was just wondering if you had any suggestions for that.
mhm, mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing that comes up is I want to be like really, really careful not to mansplain sleepiness to the mother of a 1-year-old or something, it's like, okay, that's careful, Brensilver, it's like, that's my thought. But and that's the only time it can happen is after the kids are down. It can't be early or something. No, it's late. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, even I mean, I do think there's value in it, even in falling asleep. Even if they slept from the opening bell until the closing, there's something actually important about it. And so not to be dismissive of that, but I get that it's like, okay, how do we work with this? And is it you're just sit, or do you chat, or kind of check in, or any of that? Or
Yeah, we do check in the beginning, and sometimes we'll just chat and catch up after. They'll
Mhm,
have questions sometimes.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but I think like something they said like just this Monday, it's like, oh, it feels like I have less thoughts. But
mhm.
both of them were totally like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. Right, right.
And I was like, great, that's great. And and I just tell myself the fact that they're showing up every week for the last 6 months, maybe they are, it's like helping them in some way. I don't know, but I feel like I want to like just help them try to beat the sleepiness a little bit if they can.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. Right. Well, sometimes we don't know whether we've fallen asleep or not. But if you don't know whether you've fallen asleep or not, you have definitely fallen asleep. That's the basic guidance, I would say. And and I'm sure they're sleeping, and may they have the sweetest little, Dharma dreams or whatever they are, whatever's happening. I don't know. That's tricky. That's, really intense, end of the day, end of a really depleted. There are, ways of working with sleepiness, but I'm not super optimistic about it, and part of me thinks like, yeah, you may want to give instructions around working with sleepiness, or kind of like the brightness of the mind, and pairing relaxation with brightness and all these things. But maybe you acquiesce in some way, or maybe you experiment with, okay, let's do a little walking practice, and give them some nice walking instructions, and have them, maybe you do that for the whole time, or maybe that's the first half, kind of, or something like that. And then you ring a bell, you just tell them stay right there, so you'll hear, and then they come sit for a few minutes. Maybe it's 2/3 is walking, or some qigong or something, but it's like, I that's worth experimenting, because it's actually, sleepiness is a very to take a stand against sleepiness and to actually work with it is very painful, and it's a very slippery object, basically, because it's like our basic tool of attention is itself captured by the sleepiness more than it is by other hindrances, basically. And so, um, yeah, and maybe it's like, okay, once a month, let's carve out just 20 minutes on a morning, sometime, when they can have a little, like, okay, get your space, and then let's all meet caffeinated and ready, on a weekend morning or something like this. Can we do that? Is that possible? Some of the things on my mind. Yeah, but they're coming, and you also, one other thing is, you might make the sitting a little shorter, experiment with that. And maybe they're there for the kind of heart connection, and or maybe you do some rhythm where you're sort of like, you're actually ringing a bell every 2 minutes or something, not doing a sound bath or something, but just like, okay, I'm going to ring this every whatever, and just sort of like, I don't know, I'm making this up, but that's some of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful. I think the bell thing might actually work. So
Okay.
it's not even the walking meditation. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thank
Great.
you.
Great. Thanks. Yeah.
Um, hey, Matthew. I
Hi. Welcome.
feel like I'm becoming a groupie.
Uh,
It's been a few sits. Um, hey, mine is a teaching question.
Yeah.
Um, I just between explaining what an activity is, because a meditation or a walking meditation, loving kindness practice, and saying its benefits.
Mhm.
I really want, and it's mostly because I've 90% of my teaching has been in housing projects,
Mm,
to teenagers and to adults.
mm,
I mean, and this is true for anyone. It's not just people in housing projects, but it just happens to be my audience.
mhm,
I feel like there's language that I'm missing to
mm,
just, and I know I'm asking a former academic, which may be, um, just to really simplify. Hey, so why is sitting, being still? Why is not talking?
mhm,
Why is
mhm,
moving slowly with focus? Why is that
mhm,
so good for me? Like, how do I go from that to these
mhm,
things on the other side that you say, you
mhm,
know, or I'm
mhm,
just wanting, even when I prompt people what to be curious about,
mhm,
and I do, like, how are you feeling now? And we sort of checking in afterwards.
mhm,
I'm just curious, maybe how you talk about that with
mhm.
your teaching.
Yeah. Well, you've come to the wrong person, but anyway, I'll say something. So I do feel like I haven't done teaching in that context, but I do feel like we have to be very versatile and have a wide repertoire of basically the way we talk about the mechanisms of action of the practice, right? So mechanism of action, that's borrowed from pharmacology. It's like, okay, the Prozac, activates these serotonin receptors, da, 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 da. Okay, that's the mechanism of action. What's the mechanism of action in meditation? And we're always talking about it, whether we recognize it or not. We're talking about how to do it, like you say, and we're talking about that it works, but we're also talking, when you're talking about that it works, you're often talking about the mechanism, how it transforms us, right? And there are a lot of mechanisms of action, I would say, like I was joking with the undergrad kids yesterday or a couple of days ago, is like, that mindfulness is a dirty drug in the sense that it activates, that's like the language, it activates a wide range of receptors, basically, like, to use that metaphor. We we have to find our own language with it, and we have to hone it, and it has to be a very wide-ranging, a wide-ranging repertoire for how we talk about it, right? Because in some context, it's not, we just have to adapt because this is part of how we establish relevance, right? And so we need to be kind of telling essentially a story about the nature of suffering, the nature of the practice, and the nature of the healing,
And
and
I just even just to focus, and by the way, I do consistently come to the wrong teacher, so that's a
yeah, yeah, okay. Well, happy to be the wrong guy today. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's something about me too. But even if you just talk about the body,
Hmm.
all this focus that we use. I mean, you did do that spectrum of awareness with us just now as an option, but so often we start with the body. So if someone says, "Hey, why are we, what's that going to do?
Hmm.
Why is that?" Even if someone just wants to understand they've had a good
Hmm.
experience, why
Yeah,
is it working? Is
yeah,
there any?
yeah, yeah. So I do feel like we have to tailor our language to the context. So it's like, okay, sometimes, sometimes the practice gets framed in these super kind of mystical, existential ways, like that. Okay, sometimes it gets framed as more a psychotherapy. Okay, sometimes, like my mind goes to like, okay, sometimes it's how do you speak directly to the concerns of the group, And so, okay, sometimes I knew, one teacher who was working and describe, the way they language the practice was mind power, it was like, this is in the more clinical kind of context with like working in, some tough guys, like, and it was like, okay, are you going to let your mind boss you around for the rest of your life? You just have a thought, you just get bossed around. You have a feeling, you do it. That's the approach, right? And that was in the context of San Quentin, right? Like, and okay, so is that's just an example of like just how different the language can be, and like, okay, it's sort of leveraging the sense of this thirst for autonomy, right? Where it's like, I'm not going to let my mind boss me around, that kind of, but it's like, that's a very different kind of approach than, you know, love your pain to death or something like that, right? It's like, this is very different, right? But you're attuning to like, okay, what is, you really have to like graft in the practice to the kind of infrastructure of the mind of the person you're speaking to or the group, and you just got to be innovative and explore different ways. Like, okay, okay, what do the adolescents, what do they care about? Like, oh, I'm asking, like, what do they care about?
Well, I can answer that. And by the way, when I
Yeah,
taught a group of 40 LA law enforcement officers, and I
yeah,
wanted them to sit in partners and
right.
look eye to eye in an open eye partner meditation, they were just in titters, just saying partner. And I used that thing of just intuitively in the moment. Do you have the self-discipline to sit in
Mm-hmm.
stillness? Like, can
Mm-hmm.
you go 5 minutes?
Yeah, 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 right,
And so there was a little bit of that. I think a
right.
lot of the adolescents and even the adults shared the thing of, people would say to me, "Hey, you don't know the stress of what it is to be a mom who's broke with
Yeah,
children. You don't know." Some of the young men would say to me, "There's so much fighting at school. There's so much. My mom goes
yeah,
crazy at home. I can't sleep at night." So a lot of people were dealing really with just stress
yeah.
and weight of, you know, survival kind of issues,
Right,
you know?
right, right. Right. So I mean, one piece is I'm just very humble about what the practice can and cannot do, and finding ways, the language I use, but as you got to tailor it. It's like, yeah, suffering is a multidisciplinary problem, basically, and it's like, this is not a panacea. And part of the also just not getting too caught up in disseminating wisdom. It's like part of my intention in being in that context is to be changed by them, is to be changed by whoever I'm with, and for them to feel that kind of, that fluidity in your own role, that you're willing to be actually informed, learn, grow, be changed by them, in the same way that when we sit, we're willing to be changed by experience. And but I feel like, okay, well, people need to know that you don't have some diluted notion that it's like, okay, just pay attention to your breath and body, and the kind of multi-layered, interdisciplinary problem that is like poverty and da 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 da, it just dissolves or something. So it's like important, I feel like, if people are going to have any buy-in at all, to know that you're not overselling what it is, right? And so there's a kind of appreciation of the depth of, the depth of challenge, and just how difficult life is, and how the oppressive forces and all of this, right? It's like, want to like them to understand that you understand that. And then it's like, okay, I get, I get that. And my mind goes in a lot of ways because I'm not even conscious of all the ways I language the practice, but it's like a million different ways that are little riffs in my head that I've just cultivated over years. But it's like, part of my mind goes like to something like, well, like I get the like incredible intensity and difficulty of it, and it feels like maybe you got to be worrying about something at every moment, but that's fatiguing for your heart and mind. Maybe even though it's not going to resolve the multi-layered dukkha that you're describing, maybe this is just like you actually carve out a little bit of time when your heart gets to actually relax. You're with people who mean you no harm. I'm watching the door. We're here, together, and we explore. And of course, it's not merely peace that will arise. A lot will arise in them. Everything, but it's like this is just what, I almost have to be there to have some sense of it. And then I would also, some teachers, different teachers who have a lot of experience in that context have nice language, nice phrases, and so it's worth poking around, and just hearing some ways that people talk if things are recorded. I'm sure they are somewhere. Yeah. Some of what's on my mind, but you got to be like tinkering and adjusting and seeing what lands and finding ways of speaking from your heart that is so they know you're in it, but it's like but you're speaking directly to the concerns in a kind of humble way. That's what's coming.
People keep begging me to come back. So it's
That's
like
beautiful.
there's
That's
definitely
beautiful.
resonance, and we do a
Yeah.
lot. And just as we do a lot of somatic practices,
Yeah, yeah.
somehow even qigong moves and things like that,
Yeah.
meditations. Frankly, we've even done restorative yoga, sort of going to Rocky. So people just
Nice.
get of exhaustion, and so
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the body get quiet first.
Mm.
But
But
anyway, that's helpful, Matthew.
yeah, yeah. That's
Appreciate.
great. That's great. And don't yeah, I mean, everything I said, and I think one can cultivate that too, in really powerful ways. And, don't it's just good not to ever lose sight of your basic job of like loving them,
Yeah.
and sharing that sense of like, okay, there's just kind of yeah, this is not a kind of informational transfer where they're being told how to practice. Some of it is just like actually creating a kind of ambiance with your own mind and your care, and they just sort of find their place in that. And don't let the details work themselves out. So
Okay.
yeah, but it sounds like you're doing lovely work with them.
Yeah, the premise is for them to test drive. It's not about listening to me. It's like find your own toolkit and
Mhm.
see what you resonate with, and that might change. And
Mhm.
anyway, but thank you. That was good to be here.
Yeah, yeah, great. Okay, time for maybe one more if there's somebody who wants to jump in.
Hey, Matthew. Just curious in terms of how you utilize self-disclosure when you teach. And for in my experience with most teachers, a lot of the self-disclosure is events that took place over a decade
Decades
ago.
ago.
Right,
Oh
right.
yeah, that's
And
right. Back in the
it's
60s, I had this moment of
yeah,
aversion, and then I let it go, and I
yeah.
realized, yeah.
I had I was teaching about a week ago and on a Tuesday night, and on the weekend before, I had this kind of intense situation happen at a
Mm,
show I was at with my wife, and it was really triggering. And then I really thought that I should take that in on Tuesday, and I wasn't clear about it. And yet I thought there was a lot of value about teaching when you're not clear, right? Not teaching when you're not clear, but practicing when you're not clear, and what that looks like, because that's a lot of what we're experiencing, right, in real time. I pivoted from that because I was just like, this was just too raw for me at this particular time. Let's kick the can down the road a little bit. But I was just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, I don't know. There are people, some of it is just the personal style. So people are, some of it is like you have to kind of acquiesce in some ways to what feels comfortable, kind of, you know. But some kind of core principles to my mind is like, I don't know where this, maybe it comes from 12 step, but is like teach from the scar, not the wound, you know? If you're actively working through something, and I've seen teachers, you know, senior teachers, they it's too early for them to be talking about something. They might not totally know it. And um, and then I've seen the other end, which is like people talk about their kind of inner life only, you know, from decades ago or so, that kind of thing. And that's a style, you know, and it's like, how do we relate to authority? How do we relate to our own vulnerability? How do we, you know, like those are open questions. I don't think there's one thing, but I would say, yeah, we want to feel, yeah, like there's some scarification that like that makes it, you know, and that might be one day kind of. It doesn't have to be like a decade, but it's like it may be not that, you know, it may be in a month it's right to talk about the show with your wife or something, you know, with the crew or something. But the guiding principles are I'm doing this for their benefit, you know, like this is not me working anything out in real time. Like I'm very clear that I'm doing this for them, you know, and um, and sometimes that's hard to know in certain zones. That's hard to know. So it's like in general, it's like okay, err on the side of, for me, err on the side of caution if you don't know whether it's okay. You know, it's like because not strictly necessary. Sometimes people overuse self-disclosure in what I think of as slightly manipulative way. Like you can be BFF with a bunch of kids if you self-disclose in some radical kind of ways that I think are inappropriate, but you can do it, you know, and you can do that with adults too. But it's like watching that. I sometimes it's a question of how I actually feel like my commitment is I don't want I don't want to leave any part of my life out in the sense of all of my freedom and all of my dukkha, confusion, greed, hate, delusion. Like, I don't want that to be like bracketed off and outside of it. So everything I talk about in a certain way is informed by what is unhealed in myself. But I'm not talking about it very explicitly or something like that. And it's kind of the subtlety of it feels like actually important, but the inclusion of it also feels important because I do not want to be depicting a kind of idealized path, you know, and I think teachers get into the habit of it is sort of like these sanitized versions of the Dharma path or something like that, and it just doesn't feel um, it's like that's actually doing a disservice to yogis students because they're I feel like it's maybe inspirational, but in the end it's a little confusing because they fail to make sense of the suffering that co-occurs with the joy or the love or the peace or the what freedom or something like that. And so I have this like deep sense of fidelity to the fact that, you know, like uh, I am at my like least patient when I'm in the car with my parents and my dad is parking at Trader Joe's and he's treating it like he's landing an F-16 fighter pilot on a battleship in war times, and I know I'm supposed to let go, but I fucking cannot. And I know my meditation teacher. That okay, I don't say that normally. Here it's friends, we're friends, right? So it's like a small crew. But it's like, okay, no, I could say that, of course, but it's like, no, I actually want to know like that the equanimity completely broke down, when we're visiting, like that is like, okay, that has to inform how I talk about whatever mindfulness, equity, any of these things, right? So that's there, but it's there in my mind, and it's like informing it. So in a certain way, I feel like, um, in one ways I'm kind of shy, and I'm not telling a ton of personal kind of stories. In another way, my whole life is there. And if people are listening carefully to the talks I'm giving, they know about my life, actually, really know about my life and can hear it. And so that kind of explicit, implicit sort of piece, and what's kind of skillful. And then there's a piece around not kind of also not underselling one's freedom, or not like and being, kind of not shy about that in a certain way, not letting there be some kind of self-consciousness, shame, whatever around that either, and speaking, wholeheartedly about that, and being willing to tolerate whatever idealization comes, with that. And it's like, we have to look what's getting gratified in that idealization, and how much we're pulling for that. We often don't even know how much we pull for that in one way or another. We want to be crystal clear on that, not using that as kind of food or something, but tolerating it when it arises, because it's often constructive for students, and it's often important in their developmental kind of phase. And so not, you know, sometimes I see teachers sort of uncomfortable with their power, and so they tell self-deprecating kind of stories or something like that. It's like, okay, that's not quite right either, And so anyway, so a wide range of kind of considerations, um, and then personality styles of just how, what feels native to your heart. And anyway, how does all that sound with you?
Yeah, a lot of that is very alive. There's the part, and I do struggle sometimes with the but they need sometimes to hold you in a certain way. So I get that. Um, and I also have a part about life is messy, and to talk about the mess as the mess is unfolding is super beneficial.
Mhm.
But is it of benefit, right? And then
Yeah,
when mess
yeah.
becomes full. And so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's right. And don't and just I would just say be careful. Don't yeah, I think it's super beneficial. We always want to get into the trenches of life and, practice, not some, people have the sense of like, oh, the teacher's just BSing about some idealized parallel universe of letting go and mindfulness. And like, that's not good. But at the same time, I would say don't underestimate the kind of potential of for idealization, and just being thoughtful about how you're holding power, which is like fluid, but uh not not afraid to hold it either. And so anyway, just to kind of test that out. And this is a good zone to talk to, kind of colleague, and just bounce things off, that kind of thing. And just, oh, does this sound okay? What's my habit energy around this? Do I, where should I check myself? And it sounds good to me. So,
Thank you.
okay. All right, Mike. Okay, folks, we'll close here. Um, yeah, nice to spend a little time with you, and yeah, I wish you all well, and see you maybe somewhere on the Dharma campus, mindfulness campus, and Thanks for being here, Stacy. I know you're traveling, but you're still holding it down over there on Zoom too, kind of. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Matthew. Appreciate you.
my pleasure. Okay, folks,
Bye, everyone.
be well.
Thank
Bye.
you. Right.